colleagues, dear guests, dear panelists, welcome. Welcome to our second day of our conference on Central Asian regionalism in the Vertex of the EU, Russia, and China. So I am Assylzat Karabayeva, and I'm going to be the chair of this session. So the first we're going to have the first paper session, and then we will have 7 esteemed panelist members who will talk about so-called the Central Asian regionalism, and perhaps like from different aspects, from political, geopolitical, and other including other aspects. So we also have the discussants, Dr. Xiaotong Zhang and Dr. Wang. So first, what we're going to have is we will have 7 panelist speakers. Each panelist will be given 8 minutes. And after the finishing the presentations, so we will give the floor for the discussion. So I don't want to take much time, and instead just let's move to the papers. So the first panelist of our first session is Fazliddin Djamalov, and he is from Center for American Studies, IAIS, University of World Economy and Diplomacy from Tashkent. So welcome, Fazliddin. And Fazliddin will be talking about on the expanding beyond conventional connections, Central Asian nations establish new partnerships. So Fazliddin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Assylzat, Professor Xiaotong, Wang, and everyone who were just organizing this wonderful conference. Unfortunately, I will not be able to come in the offline sessions, but right now I'm in the business trip in the OEC Academy in that's why behind me is the Shell wonderful academy, and I hope that this kind of opportunities of collaboration with the Central Asian nations will foster our bilateral relations. First I'm just showing my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, we propose one of the papers which is called Expanding Beyond Conventional Connections, Central Asian Nations Establish New Partnerships. It was written by me and contributed by Aris, visiting the research fellow of our Institute for Advanced International Studies, and Malika Hakima, junior researcher. First, talking about Central Asia. Central Asian countries are currently recalibrating our strategies in response to evolving great power competitions. Traditionally, the 5 republics have adaptively balanced relations with Russia, China, and the United States as the traditional actors to safeguard our economic and political sovereignty. However, recent geopolitical shifts, including the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, and China's ascendance as a global economic power, have significantly transformed the geopolitical landscape. The geopolitical vacuum created by these changes had attracted new players vying for influence in Central Asia. Such new actors include countries from the Gulf Cooperation Council, Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan, India, and Pakistan. Although these countries may not possess the same global clout as the traditional great powers, they collectively represent the major economies with the capacity and willingness to invest in Central Asia. Talking about the multi-vector foreign policy, we are going the theoretical background of the one American political scientist, Alexander Cooley, how it was written in his book, Great Game and Local Rules. He illustrates the multi-vector foreign policy during the first half of the global war on terror from 2001 to 2020, when Central Asian countries navigated the influences in Russia. But the multi-vector foreign policy actually seeks to cultivate beneficial relations with multiple great powers while leveraging their competing interests. Okay, now going to the existing powers. If we talk about the if we divide the traditional power into the 3 sections, Western, Russian, and China's in Central Asia, let's start with the Western one. The Western sector in Central Asia intends to counterbalance Russian and China's influence while promoting economic and political stability, actually. The US has focused on security concerns and energy trade while advocating for democratic reforms. The EU, on the other hand, aims to enhance the connectivity initiatives like a Middle Corridor initiative. Talking precisely, the American approach to Central Asia can be summarized across three main dimensions: geopolitical, economic, and political one. As I have a limitation of time, I cannot go further with it. The European Union actually has also sought to increase its geopolitical footprint in Central Asia. However, despite its efforts, the EU has struggled to establish itself as an important player. One of the EU's primary objectives in Central Asia is to enhance this economic integration initiatives from these multiple corridors like a Middle Corridor Initiative and Traseka, Europe, Caucasus, and Asia. Talking about Russia, Russia maintains its historical sphere of influence in Central Asia, its economic ties, security dominance, and the presence of labor migrants and international students. In turn, the Central Asian nations pursue a strategy of balancing economic cooperation with maintaining enough distance to preserve the state sovereignty. Talking about China, actually, China plays a leading economic role through its signature economic initiatives and multilateral cooperation framework like BRI and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. With the growth of Chinese economy, its international economic engagement with Central Asia have intensified. Trade between China and Central Asia has seen a remarkable surge, increasing to 90 billion by 2023. Talking about the fourth vector, actually, which is one of my last slides, it includes such countries like Turkey, Azerbaijan, Gulf Cooperation Organization countries, Iran, India, and Pakistan. These countries all share key characteristics such as the presence of emerging economies, relative neutrality with at least 2 or 3 great powers, and being either geopolitically or culturally connected with Central Asia. Within the fourth vector, each power has its own specific national interest, of course, for engaging with Central Asia. However, the relations being built primarily focus on energy and transportation initiatives. And to be very short, I go to the conclusion. I think that the fourth vector countries are not replacing the existing growing powers influence in the region. They are merely serving as a outlet in the areas of energy and transportation to connect Central Asia with other parts of the world. For example, in the case of Turkey and Iran and Turkic and Persian countries. This approach enhances the region's autonomy, leveraging diverse partnership to navigate in this geopolitical landscape. Thank you so much. It was my short and brief presentation. I'm sorry if I extended this time limitation. Thank you so much.
Fazliddin, thank you. So the time was just on time. So before we continue, I just want to correct myself. So what we need to do is actually after each presentation, we need to have our discussion. So Dr. Xiaotong Zhang and Dr. Wang. So please have 4 minutes to discuss Fazliddin's paper.
Yeah, I have a division of Professor Wang. So Wang will cover the first one, number 1, number 2, and number 4th presentation. But I also read Fazliddin's paper before. I'm impressed by his 4th vector. As the editor-in-chief of the Economic Diplomacy Journal, I suggested to Fazliddin to focus on 4th vector, because I think this 4th vector is potentially can give rise to some innovation, some new ideas, new insights. Because we have already a lot of literature about the great powers, right? So basically, Central Asian countries, their multi-vector diplomacy, as far as we know, they are mainly targeted at these make the great power vectors, but the fourth vector is understudied. That's why I encourage Fazliddin to elaborate more, or maybe just focus the whole paper on the fourth vector to more substantively elaborate upon this concept of fourth vector. What's the difference of the fourth vector vis-a-vis the first, second, and third vector? What's the uniqueness of the fourth vector? Because you put Turkey, India, Iran in the fourth vector. So why bother to study the fourth vector? Does that make any difference? Right. So I do hope that in the future we can hear more. Maybe you would have some time to respond. I'm not sure. It depends on chair whether you will respond now or maybe after the end of the presentation. But the above is my my comment and my suggestion.
Yeah. Let's have answers right away.
Okay. May I answer? Okay, thank you so much. Regarding why we are putting these countries to the fourth vector, the relations actually with the Central Asian republics, we are seeing it like it's a marriage of convenience, as I told, as I wrote in my article. For Central Asian countries, the withdrawal from US from Afghanistan, actually the Russian-Ukrainian conflict and China have created an environment where both Russia and China are trying to fill the vacuum left by the Western influence. That's why Central Asian countries nowadays aversion to overdependence. They are looking for partners to diversify the relations, not only focusing to Russia and China. We actually can see it from the foreign policy strategies, which is led by Azerbaijan, for example, which is an oil-dependent economy. And nowadays, Azerbaijan actually looking forward for this kind of transportation initiative, as I told, as a ground for connecting Central Asian countries with other countries, as a Persian Gulf, it could be, or OCS countries, like Middle Corridor Initiative. But I hope that we will have a further discussion on this topic. Actually, I thankful for your recommendation to focus on the fourth vector, but I hope that this kind of a overview of existing powers nowadays is also essential. But as I had kind of a limitation on words to talking about the fourth vector, actually, I may add my comments on energy and transportation, because I had actually a lot of materials and analysis to add to my research article, if you may allow. But I think that I'm going exceed the number of words of the paper. Thank you.
Okay, Fazliddin, thanks a lot. Thank you very much for your answer. Now let's move to the second panelist. The next.
Assylzat,
Yes,
maybe Professor Wang wants to say something. I have a division of labor between myself and Wang. He will cover the first, second, and fourth presentation.
Okay, so because Dr. Wang,
can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I don't know I'm not sure each speaker finish his presentation. I have give a comment, or when all the panelists finish their presentation, I give a comment.
So we decided after each panelist.
Each panelist.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think Central Asia geopolitical is a very important topic, and intensification of geopolitical dynamics in Central Asia has promoted the Central Asian country to pursue a balanced diplomatic strategy. I think this big speed very difficult and complex topic, so I don't totally understand what the situation has is new trends in Central Asia. So the title of the speaker is Conventional Connections. So my question is, what is conventional connections? Or maybe in the other words, there are some new connections. What is the new connections? Yeah, that's my question.
Thank you so much, Professor Wang.
Fazliddin, may I ask you to quickly answer briefly answer the question, okay?
Yeah, of course.
Out of time.
Professor Wang, I actually showed in my presentation that talking about the conventional connections, I mean the traditional players in Central Asia, which is a Western vector, which includes United States and EU, Russian influence, and China. Whereas talking about the expansion of these conventional connections, we're meaning the fourth vector countries like OTS-led Turkey, Azerbaijan, Iran, India, or Pakistan, and Gulf Cooperation Organization countries also. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Fazliddin. Now let's move to our next speaker. And our next speaker, the discussants, also please take the notes. So we are moving to Artur's paper, Artur Utebayev from Maqsut Narikbayev University, Astana. And he will be discussing on Central Asia in the geopolitical crossfire, strategic alignment amidst the Russia-Ukrainian conflict. So Artur, the floor is yours. You have 8 minutes. Artur, are you here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen, the conference participants. So greetings from Astana. My name is Artur Utebayev. I represent Maqsut Narikbayev University today. So first of all, I'd like to extend my words of gratitude for this opportunity to join such a remarkable event. So this is in line with my rationale to find the research gap. What I mean that if we quickly look through the papers that were specifically published following 2022, we can find that there is kind of limited evidence from the Central Asian perspective, or broadly from smaller states perspective. So mostly the papers are written from the major powers perspectives. So I think this is the gap that we need to fill, that we need to work towards, to contribute for. That's why that kind of conferences and special editions are very, very important these days in terms of giving the voice for those scholars who live and work in Central Asia. That's why we say, we provide this inside-out perspectives to the dynamics in the region, regional dynamics within the this geopolitical turbulence taking place. So I was specifically focusing on the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and the implications to the Central Asian development, integration. So this is to say that, like it was already discussed, smaller states, including the Central Asian states, have been adopting this multi-vector foreign policy. So it is a non-ideological, pragmatic foreign policy, right? Engaging multiple major powers. So why there is no another vector where they're excluding the major powers, where there is no a vector specifically with the Central Asian states. So this is what this is the avenue I am looking into. So the best approach is to bridge, the best approach is not to be confined into particular school of thought like realism or another grand theory of social constructivism, but rather take this pragmatic stance. So as we're talking about regionalism, the integration processes, I believe that common ideas, common norms and values provide more explanatory power in terms of understanding these processes. So I believe that it's not only the structural constraint that push forward the Central Asian countries to look so-called shelter-seeking strategy, but rather willingness of those Central Asian states to cooperate and engage in integrational processes, right? So that's why I specifically applied this political discourse analysis by Fairclough, in particular, argumentation framework, argumentation, deliberation framework that examines those political choices that decision makers take under the circumstances of uncertainty. So we don't really know when the ceasefire will happen between Russia and Ukraine. Even with the accession to power of Donald Trump again in the US, we're still kind of cautious to predict the ceasefire, so still uncertainty. In this sense, we can apply this practical reasoning structure that would set the goals, right, within particular circumstances, informed by common values, normative beliefs, that will bring the actions, particular actions, concrete actions to reach those goals. So for this, I specifically took these consultative meetings of Central Asian heads of state that has been gaining momentum. We had just recently the one in Astana this summer, right? But I analyzed the one that was held in Cholpan-Ata in Kyrgyzstan back in 2022, just roughly half a year later, when the conflict broke out, right? Why? Just to see the immediate reactions, immediate reactions of Central Asian leaders, how they kind of internalize the context, right? So to cut the long story short, overall we found convergence in terms of the long-term, especially policies, long-term objectives, and there are some divergence in national priorities in terms of the short-term objectives. Because of lack of time, I can't really go into the details. So in the paper, there is more nuanced, more specific details of how they converge and diverge. But like I said, again, overall, there is a strong commitment, at least uttered commitment to deeper the integration further, right? So if we jump to the conclusion, now as we established, that the argumentation is calling for deeper integration, the next step would be the continuation, the follow-up of this research would be to collect some empirical evidence, right, to see if there are those integration processes are taking place in real life time, real life data. So just a quick example is the cooperation initiative, Birleştik, that took place this year again in Kazakhstan, the military exercises that excluded the major powers like Russia and China and the other major powers. Another research avenue would be including the other regional players, like Azerbaijan was mentioned by previous speaker, is very proactive. Moreover, Ilham Aliyev was invited to 2 last consultative meetings and avenues of organization of Turkic states, OTS again was mentioned as well, taking place in parallel, right? So as we see, there are much research avenue that we can engage in, and it is very, very good news for us, those operating in Central Asia.
Okay,
that's it.
Thank you. Yes, thanks a lot, Artur. So our discussants, whether it's Xiaotong, Zhang or Wang,
it's on me. It's on me.
Okay.
I appreciate Artur's presentation and also his paper. I remember when I initially received his paper, I'm quite impressed by his very lively language. So that's my first initial impression. I say, okay, this paper writes in a very exciting way. So it's very lively. And then I think I read the second version. Now I just heard the presentation. So it's very much focused on the Central Asia strategic alignments facing the Russia-Ukrainian war. So 2 comments. The first comment is I'm very interested in this research avenue of this strategic alignment. I mean, as a concept, especially the setting, the research setting is the Central Asia Consultative Meeting. So it is an institution. It must be a very structured dialogue, which is basically a summit among CA leaders. So I'm very interested in how, in detail, these leaders conduct the strategic alignment facing the most important geopolitical priority, which is the war. So I would appreciate if you could add more granular details into this strategic alignment of the CACM, Central Asia Consultative Meeting. So this is the first comment. The second comment is Donald Trump got re-elected. So that means this paper needs to be, your paper, I mean, Artur's paper needs to be updated, right? But the challenge is that we have some time pressure to prepare for the final publication. But I still think we have some time. I think Donald Trump he's very hasty in giving the end to this war. So he's now already very active. So I guess this will also have some effects on the strategic alignment of CACM. That means Central Asia leaders probably need to discuss among themselves about Donald Trump's proposal for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, right? So I think this is the latest development because Donald Trump just got re-elected on 5th of November, 10 days before. So I think that we probably need to update this paper with the latest Donald Trump's proposal. So I think that today, or maybe yesterday, Donald Trump has already released his proposal for the ceasefire. So I guess the Central Asia leaders needs to discuss about that, right? Especially geopolitical implications for Central Asia region. Okay, so these are 2 points I want to make. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zhang. So I hope that Artur would consider this kind of comments and perhaps updating the paper. So let's move to our next speaker, next panelist. So Gülperi Güngör, and she's from Center for Eurasian Studies from Ankara, and she's going to talk about the infrastructure-led development and the C5+1. Yeah, so Gülperi, can you hear us?
Yeah,
Yes, the floor is yours. Yes, we can also see your screen.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My presentation will be on the evolving relation between infrastructure-led development and the C5+1 mechanism as a paveway for Central Asia's role as a regional actor. In the course of past decade, we have witnessed the emergence of development regime globally. This situation is related to failure of Washington consensus and later its versions such as focusing on good governance. Following the 2008 financial crisis, the World Bank published the report Shaping Economic Geography. This report emphasized the importance of infrastructure-led development and spatial planning with the support of states. Schindler argued that the development of transnational regions and large-scale infrastructure projects are the remanifestation of the spatial planning strategies of post-World War II era. But unlike special Keynesianism, the aim here is to achieve neoliberal goals of promoting export-oriented industrialization. Actually, since 19th, improving infrastructure to develop connectivity of the landlocked Central Asia countries has been on the agenda. Post-Soviet transitology studies, which are predominantly being based on assumptions of the modernization theory, have already been advocating for infrastructure investments as a means to drive development in Central Asia. And following 2008 crisis, various actors, including China, the US, EU, prioritized infrastructure projects in Central Asia, highlighting the region's international connectivity. These initiatives, such as C5+1 and the Belt and Road Initiative, reflects how these states aim to connect Central Asia to global markets. These strategies contribute to region's deeper integration into global value chains and its evolving role with the international political economy. As I said, due to the global economic system, after every international economic crisis, we see that international economic system develops new strategies to renew itself. Just as Panic 1873 led to investment of French capital in the Trans-Siberian Railway due to the capital surplus. And at that time, Silk Road gained prominence. For example, Germany had leased Jiaru Bay in China for 99 years at that time, and Silk Road gained importance. It was during that period that Silk Road definition was popularized by Richthofen. The next revival of Silk Road came in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. In 2011, US proposed the new Silk Road to boost trade and connections in South and Central Asia. And later we, of course, know that China launched One Belt, One Road initiative. Actually, this initiative was China's the Great Western Development Plan launched in 1999. It's based on this to spur economic growth in China's western regions and improving infrastructure. Had already laid the groundwork for this initiative, and the Silk Road served as a powerful brand for these efforts. A notable context for this period is the shift in global manufacturing. Since 1970, the share of G7 countries in the world manufacturing has fallen below 50%, and while 6 nations, China, South Korea, India, Poland, Indonesia, and Thailand have significantly increased their share. In response to the deindustrialization seen in Western countries, the US and the EU started to try and encourage private sector investments in abroad. One region where they are trying to promote infrastructure is Central Asia. These efforts align with the broader regionalization of Central Asia, where the region is increasingly treated as a unified regional actor in the global landscape. In 1990s and 2000s, US actively supported GUUAM and projects like CASA 1000 in the post-Soviet space. Through this, US sought to establish observation stations to monitor key transit corridors, while CASA 1000 aimed to strengthen regional energy connectivity. Similarly, the European Union supported the Traseka project to improve regional connectivity. However, we have seen that these projects have not achieved the desired level of success. For example, Traseka struggled to stand out due to the regional instability and the challenges of multimodal transportation, with Western companies often opting for transit through Russia to tap into its rapidly growing market. The need for alternative transportation routes due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, as well as problem with Europe's energy supply, have once again brought Central Asia to the forefront, and also the infrastructure-led development regime emerged in economic politics affected this issue. So C5-1+ format established in 2015, and this serves as a consultation mechanism aimed at fostering regional cooperation between Central Asia countries, and started with the US. It plays a significant role in shaping Central Asia's relationship with US as a regional actor. Although aid cuts to Central Asia countries during Trump administration led to question about mechanisms' viability, it regained prominence after 2022. At the 2022 meeting, US introduced Economic Resilience Initiative in Central Asia, aimed at mitigating the impact of sanctions against Russia on Central Asian countries, enhancing regional trade routes, expanding export markets, and attracting more investments. As a part of...
Could you please conclude? The time is up.
Okay. So the other is B5+1 formed by US, the private sector counterpart of this. And the Frederick Starr reiterated his views at forum, like connecting Central Asia to South Asia, and including Afghanistan as a Central Asian countries. Then EU, we see the EU format of this C5+1, developing relations with Central Asia and EU countries also by themselves. South Korea and Japan increasingly involved as well. So we later see the China's version of C5+C first held in Xi'an, highlighted cooperation in the fields of economy, trade, energy, and transportation. Conclusion, Central Asia's growing importance as a regional actor is evident through various international initiatives aimed at enhancing connectivity and economic cooperation. The C5+1 led by US and the other countries emphasize the region's strategic significance in global geopolitics, and can be understood that these engagements with the framework of the new emerged infrastructure-led development emerged globally. This regime, its focus on infrastructure, energy, aligns with broader goals of integrating Central Asia into global value chains.
Okay, thank you, Gülperi.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks a lot. So the discussants, Dr. Xiaotong Zhang, is it
Yeah.
your...
Yeah, I also covered this presentation. I find this subject is very interesting. It's called the infrastructure-led development. And the case is C5+1 or plus other countries. And I find it's particularly interesting because Gülperi starts from the historical part, right? So there's historical critical junctures like the 1873 European financial crisis, the 2008 global financial crisis. So these financial crises, these crisis moments as critical junctures give rise to these big infrastructure investments. I think that's a very interesting starting point. And then I think Gülperi needs to maintain this consistent framework. So in other words, apply this historical framework to the empirical part, which is the contemporary C5+1 infrastructure. Because I think your analytical framework is really this kind of, I think this is something historical institutionalism, right? You have critical junctures. So you need to apply this historical institutionalism to the infrastructure-led development taken by C5+1 frameworks. So how to ensure this nexus between your theoretical part and the empirical part? I think this is a challenge. You need to apply this historical theory to C5+1. And for your C5+1, I think that you need to make it clear whether it's just the C5 plus United States or C5 plus China, and also because we are now having more than 10 C5+1, right? With Korea, with India, with the European Union. So I think that you need to really make it clear, because if you focus too much, I mean, your energy would be spread evenly. I suggest you focus on maybe just C5 plus United States, C5 plus European Union, and C5 plus China, because these three are the major players who also C5 plus Russia. These four are major players for the infrastructure-led development in Central Asia. So you need to focus on this. And I think it's quite interesting. I will be very interested in reading this, the revision of this paper. Okay, I stop here.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Zhang. Now let's turn to our next speaker, and our next speaker is Parisa Shahmohammadi, and she's from Institute for Political and International Studies, China Studies, Tehran, and her paper title is Institutionalization of Shared Interests, Norms and Identity, BRI's Impact on Making a Regional International Society in Central Asia. So, Parisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, you can start now.
My presentation is entitled Institutionalization of Shared Interests, Norms and Identity, Belt and Road Initiatives' Impacts on Making the Regional International Society in Central Asia. English School of International Relations theory is the framework that I have used for assessing the possibility of regional international society in Central Asia. The English School is contingent to a ternary distinction among international system, international society, and world society that are codified as Hobbesianism, Grotianism, and Kantianism. The idea of international society relies on the assumption of the societal nature of interstate relations. Therefore, order in international politics is maintained due to social bonds between states. As Hadley Bowl has mentioned, international society exists when a group of states conscious of certain common interests and common values from a society in the sense that they conceive themselves to be bound by a common set of rules in their relations with one another and share in the working of common institutions. Here he explains the meaning of international society. And the concept of international society, according to English School, is the master concept of this theoretical framework. The other dynamic that has come to the forefront in the studies of international society is the increasing attention paid to regions. A pressing need was felt to account for regional dynamics at play in global international society. Some scholars applied the concept of a regional international society with regard to the Middle East, Scandinavia, and still other regional groupings approached for the English School perspective included Europe, European Union, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and even Africa. In spite of this sophisticated theoretical approach, there was a lack of a study about Central Asia from this perspective. Moreover, a plethora of scholars have employed the theoretical framework of English School in order to contextualize European integration, both historically and internationally, but few studies have been done regarding integration of non-Western regions. Another important concept in my research is Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative, presented in 2013, is Xi Jinping's landmark connectivity project. It aims to promote connectivity in the fields of trade, infrastructure, and currency through multi-layered international collaboration among states and international organizations. The Belt and Road has been described as the normative link between China's domestic development and global orientation. Some analysts suggest that it reflects a shift from keeping a low profile and biding its time to becoming a global leader whose norms and rules are reflected in international institutions. Some other scholars also view Belt and Road as a tool to export Chinese political norms and give China normative legitimacy and promoting Chinese soft power. In academia, the BRI is portrayed as a form of multi-layered multilateralism or multi-channel diplomacy, a new set of institutions in coalition with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank that aims to support Chinese ideas, aspirations, and norms to establish a community of shared destiny and consolidate China's new role in norm setting and diffusion and translate China's economic power into political advantages by reshaping the regional institutions and their economic orders. BRI is the Central Asia. In Central Asia, BRI has various shared interests that benefit both the countries participating the initiative and the region as a whole. Some of the key shared interests include infrastructure development, economic growth, regional connectivity, energy cooperation, and people-to-people exchanges. Overall, the shared interests by Belt and Road Initiative in Central Asia contribute to the socio-economic development, connectivity, and cooperation among the participating countries, creating mutual benefits and opportunities for sustainable growth and prosperity. Belt and Road Initiative's role in the institutionalization of shared interests and values can be divided into global and Chinese approaches. Regarding the Chinese norms and values in Central Asia, China promotes several norms with Chinese characteristics that reflect its unique political, economic, and cultural philosophies. In this regard, we can name some of them as the development of finance with Chinese characteristics, promotion of Chinese culture, and green development, and promoting Chinese values. On the other hand, the global norms that China puts emphasis are including collective security and stability, state-led development, multilateralism, infrastructure development, trade facilitation, people-to-people connection, governance models, standards and regulation, and alignment with global norms. On the whole, the Belt and Road Initiative serves as a platform for institutionalizing shared interests, norms, and values among participating countries by fostering economic interdependence, encouraging cultural exchange, setting governance standards, promoting multilateral cooperation, exerting soft power influence, and aligning with global sustainable development goals. Through these mechanisms, the BRI not only enhances infrastructure and trade, but also contributes to a broader framework of cooperation and shared interests and values on the global stage. China is trying to implement BRI's normative approach. Its implementation in Central Asia will lead to a regional international society. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Farisa. Now we have the discussion.
Yeah.
So is it Dr. Wang there?
Yeah, I will give a brief comment. I think this is a very interesting topic. It studies the role of BRI from the perspective of the international society. As we know, the concept of the international society is a significant notion within the English School of International Relations theory. The main point of this theory is that states adhere to fundamental institutions norms, which are established due to the presence of shared culture. From this perspective, if Central Asia can evolve into international society based on cultural similarity, therefore fostering a common understanding, can BRI play such a role in this process? If not, we need to expand the concept of the international society. Yeah, I think China posed a new notion, shared mankind destiny. I think this is a good way to think about international society. Therefore, I think we should dig into the notion of international society and give a deep argument about this notion. I just give a brief comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. So now let's turn to our next speaker. And then our next speaker is Farukh Hakimov. And he's from Development Strategy Center from Tashkent. And his paper title is Exploring the C5+1 format, Prospects for Regional Integration in Central Asia.
Thank
Farukh,
you.
the floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm very delighted to be a part of this very important event. And I noticed how the topics of panelists are very interrelated and enriches each other. And in my paper, I will also analyze and observe how the new format of cooperation in Central Asia, like C5+1, is serving as a platform also for the integration of regional cooperation in Central Asia. So one of the main assumption is that C5+1 framework provides a unique opportunity for Central Asian states to navigate external pressure and address shared challenges, common challenges that face all Central Asian states and their main partner, major partner, and which also advances mutual development and mutual cooperation. So consequently, the paper argues that strengthening regional integration, especially through platforms like C5+1, is essential to ensure the security and stability and also sustainable development in Central Asia. That's why C5+1 is also in a theoretical understanding is a kind of mechanism of dovetailing or balancing regionalism. So talking about the regional cooperation in Central Asia, I should mention the positive changes and also some efforts made by Uzbekistan since 2017. In fact, if we look at the history, Uzbekistan prioritized the Central Asian region since its independence. But in 2017, it again highlighted as a top agenda because during this period, we had tops and downs between bilateral relations in Central Asia, especially talking about the regionalism in Central Asia. We can also see that even it started from very high level, like Central Asian Union, and then step by step, it even disappeared. After the, let's say, almost 10 years of vacuum or absence of regional cooperation since 2000, let's say 6 up to 2017, because of the efforts of, let's say, initiative of Central Asian countries, especially Uzbekistan, which has supported by Kazakhstan and other neighboring countries, the regional cooperation has re-emerged in the form of consultative meetings. So Uzbekistan's approach, and I think it is also observed in other Central Asian states' approach to strengthen regionalism, it starts from leveling up bilateral relations. For that reason, we can see how Uzbekistan could establish good partnership, even a strategic partnership and alliances in Central Asian countries. For example, since 2017, Uzbekistan had signed the partnership agreements on strategic or even comprehensive strategic agreements with Turkmenistan, with Kyrgyzstan, and recently Uzbekistan signed the treaty even on aligned relations with Kazakhstan, and this year with Tajikistan, which in my understanding will be a kind of very fundamental to create a regional organization in Central Asia in the future. Talking about the consultative meetings of Central Asian states, it is also step by step getting more institutionalized. If we look at this year's summit in Astana in August, we have observed how the Central Asian state leaders of Central Asian states are committed for regional cooperation and regional integration. For the first time, from the words of leaders, we heard about the regional integration for the first time, and also about the regional identity, which is very, very challenging to create any institution or organization in Central Asia. And besides this, we have seen some very important documents have been signed, like a roadmap on regional cooperation, and also the Central Asia 2040 concept on regional cooperation, which also means that besides being optimistic regional researchers, our leaders also going to be very optimistic about regional cooperation and integration. So this kind of close and shared understanding of regionalism played a very important role to the emergence of C+1 platform of multilateral cooperation with major external partners. And even from this year, Central Asia plus China multilateral platform has even institutionalized it by opening its secretariat in Xi'an in China. It is also the main, my assumption and conclusion is that although on one hand, Central Asian regionalism is going on inter-regionally, and also the big powers also in some extent started to consider Central Asian states as a one subject of as a regional actor or even global actor. That's why we can see like C5+1 in getting more popularity, even more than 10 countries, or in case of European Union or Gulf states, we can see that regional alliances are also considering Central Asia as a one unit or subject. So in general, in terms of current geopolitical shift and the change in general in international order, I think the Central Asian states should be more integrated to maintain stability in Central Asia, and step by step, as I observed in case of Uzbekistan, which solved its bilateral relations, some very critical issues, let it be border issues or the effective use or management of water resources or the free movement of people. This kind of issues should be settled bilaterally and multilaterally, which will form the region more integrated, more stable, and more sustainable. So I think I'm following the time limitations, and this is kind of very brief about my research paper, and I'm open for our distinguished professor's comments. Professor Zhang, very good to see you again.
Hello, Farouk. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Farouk, for very much interesting paper. Yeah, Dr. Zhang, if you can start, you have 4 minutes for discussion.
Yeah, thank you for sharing us your presentation about exploring the C5+1 format, especially to see how this C5+1 format have impact on this Central Asia regional integration. And especially since Farouk comes from Uzbekistan, so Farouk gives us a lot of insights about how Uzbekistan plays a role in this C5+1 process, right? The format, the process. So here you have 3 factors. So one is C5+1, the second is Central Asia regional integration, the third is Uzbekistan. So I think that Farouk could focus very much on Uzbekistan's viewpoint, your Uzbekistan perspective about how the C5+1 can contribute to Central Asia regional integration, right? Because Central Asia regional integration propelled by C5+1 is a very big topic, right? Because you have Kazakhstan view, Kyrgyzstan view, you have so many five Central Asian countries. So I suggest you very much focus on Uzbekistan's experience, Uzbekistan's view, especially the C5+1 summits held or to be held in Uzbekistan. For example, next year, it's going to be Europe, right? EU,
Yes.
Central Asia.
Yes, and also Gulf states.
Yeah, and in the past, you also held some C5+1. So I would very much appreciate you focus on Uzbekistan's view and experience. Otherwise, it's going to be too much work.
Yes.
And also, I want to hear how Uzbekistan view about the role played by this C5+1 format vis-a-vis Central Asia regional integration, right? So how C5+1 can contribute to regional integration. So that's exactly one of the topics we discussed yesterday. I think that now Central Asia regional integration is still at its very infant stage. There's not much intra-trade within C5. There are a lot of inter-trade between C5 and other countries, especially China and the European Union. So, and also there's a lack of internal, how should I say, internal international society building. For the moment, it's mainly diplomacy, C5+1 diplomacy. So how this diplomacy process of C5+1 can contribute to a more comprehensive regionalism, a new type of regionalism within Central Asia. I think this is also a focus we need to think about. But I would very much, basically to summarize, one is Uzbekistan point of view. Second is how Uzbekistan look at the role of C5+1 for Central Asia regional integration. I think you need to explain it in a more systematic way. Thank you, Farouk.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Zhang. So now let's move to our next speaker. So there is some noise coming, maybe. Okay, now it's good. Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Now let's turn to our next speakers and to the next paper. So we are having Jessica Nyafi from Nazarbayev University in Astana, Mukhtar Amanbayoglu, University of Tsukuba, Japan, and Adi Ahmer from Nazarbayev University in Astana, and the paper's title is The Rising Multiplex World Order and the Regional Order in Central Asia, a case study of emerging rule of EU and its implications for Kazakhstan's multi-vector foreign policy. So the speakers, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good day all. Today, my colleagues and I are presenting insights from our paper on Kazakhstan's multi-vector foreign policy within the framework of multiplexity. Next slide, please. We set out to address a key research question: how does the multiplex world facilitate middle powers' multi-vector foreign policy? And to be more specific, how has Kazakhstan's multi-vectorism, viewed as unsustainable in an increasingly polarized world during instabilities, not only endured, but adapted and thrived in today's multipolar, interconnected landscape? And we study this through the case of Kazakhstan and European Union relationships. Next slide, please. The theoretical foundation of our study is multiplexity, so a concept that describes the current world order as diverse and dynamic, where power isn't concentrated solely among a few global powers. Instead, a variety of influential actors, including middle powers like Kazakhstan, play a role in shaping international norms and maintaining stability. As for multivectorism, our paper uses the concepts of hedging and omni-enmeshment within multiplexity to explain Kazakhstan's strategy. Hedging allows Kazakhstan to engage with multiple powerful states, carefully balancing relationships to avoid dependency. Omni-enmeshment, meanwhile, suggests that embedding itself within the interests of multiple powers, Kazakhstan creates overlapping spheres of influence that ultimately make it harder for any state to force a binary agreement. Next slide, please. This framework challenges the traditional structuralist views that emphasize balancing or bandwagoning around dominant states. Multiplexity offers middle powers the flexibility to forge relationships across competing powers without being constrained to a single alliance. So this world of overlapping spheres of influence allows middle powers, like Kazakhstan, to balance relationships with larger powers without the constraints of zero-sum alignments. And this gives Kazakhstan strategic flexibility to maintain partnerships with countries like Russia, China, and specifically the EU. And now I'm giving the floor to my colleagues.
Good afternoon, dear participants. So, taking back to the historical background of the practice is Kazakhstan's foreign policy focuses on balancing positive relations with global powers, ensuring strategic flexibility and geopolitical balance since its independence. But under the Narikbayev, Kazakhstan's multivectorism was proactive, but tensions between Russia and the West led to shift toward more reactive multivectorism. Critical events like the Russia-Georgia war or Crimea annexation pushed Kazakhstan to balance Russian interests while safeguarding its own, and Kazakhstan uses frameworks like CIS, EAEU, SCO, and CSTO for regional cooperation, balancing Russian influence through omni-enmeshment while acknowledging its dependence. Next slide. So, Kazakhstan and the EU relations was, since the independence, has been a part central in shaping European Union's engagement with Central Asia, which has largely been regionally focused. And initially, the European Union saw the region through a lens of instability and exotism, later evolving in a strategic partner, particularly in energy and counterterrorism. Next slide. So, the key changes after the Ukraine war. So, impact of Ukraine war on European policy has been shifted again. The war significantly changed the European Union foreign policy, shifting away from the reliance on Russian energy, which supplied over a third of its gas import in 2020. Sanctions on Russia. The European Union imposed sweeping sanctions on Russia, including bans on oil imports in December 2022 and petroleum products in 2023, emphasizing the need to diversify energy sources. Kazakhstan is seen as a potential alternative energy source, especially for gas and oil. Kazakhstan could also contribute for green energy, aiding the European Union in meeting its climate goals. Kazakhstan has shown strong interest in new forms of cooperation with the European Union, including energy diversification and green initiatives, which also shows Kazakhstan's active engagement in European Union relationships. Next slide. So the key changes, so there are four main examples that were presented. The Trans-Caspian Transport Road that was initially signed in May 2022, European Union Central Asia political expansion, the several visits of the EU high representatives, sanction compiled monitoring. The European Union praised Kazakhstan's efforts in reducing the re-export and sanctioned goods from Russia, and strategic partnership that was signed in 2023 to enhance cooperation in raw materials, batteries, and renewable hydrogen. Next slide. Yeah, now the floor I give to Professor Jessica.
Is Jessica here?
Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
controlling the thing. I lost the
sure.
my audio. Hi, sorry about that. Thank you all for having us. So I'm just going to introduce our discussions and conclusions that we found. So what we find is that Kazakhstan really challenges these, binary alignments that we believe happen in sort of a traditional realist strategy, because it's balancing across these with multi-vectorism, engaging across multiple powers simultaneously, and able to leverage interdependencies rather than forced alignments. So a lot of the pushback from one of our main questions at the beginning was that, that multi-vectorism wasn't going to last, that if Russia started to put pressure, or if Russia's interests in Europe started to come to tensions, that we would see multi-vectorism fall apart. And we don't. We actually see Kazakhstan's multi-vectorism even getting stronger after it was tested in the Ukraine war. So we don't see Kazakhstan balance, they don't see them back Russia's stances, but rather that they're balancing both sides. And really, this is coming down to this multiplex world with overlapping multiple relationships. Russia also can't risk giving up their relationship with Kazakhstan just because Kazakhstan doesn't agree with everything that it says. And so it avoids the stark choices imposed by great power rivalries. And so despite increasing pressure, Kazakhstan continues to engage with China, with Russia, with the West, demonstrating the viability of multi-vectorism in a complex global landscape. And so what we find is in our paper is that this paper deepens our understanding of multiplexity in contemporary international relations, and that Kazakhstan's multi-vector foreign policy shows how middle powers can navigate these complex geopolitical landscapes and maintain strategic autonomy amidst great power rivalries. And so rather, the international system today is showing that it's better described by this idea of multiplexity, where states can engage in multiple overlapping relationships rather than being forced into these binary alignments, particularly for middle powers like Kazakhstan. Thank you.
Thank you, dear panelists. So discussing Dr. Zhang?
It's on me.
Yeah.
And I really like this paper. I think this paper is a solid one. And this paper applies multiplex world order into Central Asia. And I think this is something new. And also, I think that the literature review is solid, and also some of the innovation part throughout the theoretical and the empirical part. So I really like this paper. I remember I gave a suggestion about polishing the language, right? I think that there are some typos, some language problems, but except that, I think this paper is solid and it's ready for publication. I think the external reviewers give quite positive comments on this paper. So I have no further problem with this paper, and I'm very happy to see the three authors in person. I mean, of course, not really in person, but at least I see your faces. Thank you for submitting your paper to our journal. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and also, so the concept itself, like the multiplex world order, Amitav Acharya's idea, so also having these kind of concepts newly used in Central Asian kind of context is also very much interesting. So thank you very much, and we are moving to our last but not least panelist member. So we have Aris Marghelis. He's from Mediterranean Foundation for Strategic Studies, Toulon, Center for Maritime and Oceanic Law, Université de Nantes. So yeah, and his paper title is a Central Asian ASEAN possible? Similarities, differences, challenges, and the Central Asia's way towards bottom-up integration. So yeah, Aris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. So let me share the PowerPoint. Okay, so I will speak about Central Asia and Southeast Asia. First, why put them in the same equation? This is a critical question to start. We have increasing similarities between both regions. The first is that both are important to international trade, also at different levels. Southeast Asia is critical to international trade, while Central Asia gains much. Both regions are composed of small and medium-sized states, while they do not encompass any great power. And the third similarity, which is relevant for this study, and somehow the result of the two first, is that both regions do attract the interest of external actors and great powers. In terms of scientific objective, I here use the ASEAN, just to make things clear, the ASEAN experience of regional integration as a, I would say, complementary exegetical tool to understand the current trends in Central Asia. So an alternative way to shed light on what happens in Central Asia, and not as a model to be reproduced as such for the C5, because this is simply possible, at least for two reasons. The first is when we're talking about Central Asia, we're talking about land trade routes, while Southeast Asia, we're talking about seaborne trade. So to make it very short, this has totally different implications in logistic terms, strategic, geopolitical, and even legal. Okay, so you don't deal with the land and the sea in the same way, to make it very short. And the second critical difference, which is widely known, in Central Asia, we don't have a supreme regional organization that pilots an integration process, while in Southeast Asia, we have one. It is ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is well-rooted. It is almost 60 years old, as it was born in 1967. So in the light of these elements, we can identify at least three core questions for both regions. The first is how to accomplish this regional integration. The second is how to organize power relations with great powers, since there is no great power in the regions. And the third is how to achieve, at least gradually, geopolitical empowerment. So how the ASEAN did, we can identify three vectors. The first is, let's say, developing, acquiring, and consolidating a regional identity. The second is pushing for regional cooperation and coordination between the members of the ASEAN, 10 members. And the last, which is the result of the two first, okay, the two first are the precondition to the third, is to emerge as an international actor. A bit more in detail, although I will try to be quick, in terms of identity, in the end, we can say that while there are huge differences between ASEAN members, the ASEAN succeeded in creating the feeling that when we, from the ASEAN, we see the world, we are something different and unique, okay, to make it very short. And there is also a symbolic dimension, which is already very important, always very important when it comes to identity, which is a flag and an anthem of the ASEAN. We have an interesting strategy developed by the ASEAN, because the countries have many differences and even frictions, historically speaking. The objective was to create a web of informal, dense, informal, and consensual exchanges and consultation between the communities of these countries. This can be political community, diplomatic, economic, military, or civil society. So in the end, by meeting very, very often, even if you don't have a precise outcome from a meeting, let's say, you get used to the other, which means socialization. And this is extremely important in such a situation. And I think it's not irrelevant for Central Asia. So in the end, this impacts the definition, the way you define your national interests. It becomes more inclusive, and you end up in including the regional interest within your own national interest. This is what we widely call the ASEAN way. And the last is how the ASEAN gained status of international actor, again with a similar strategy, that is creating a very dense net of institutions, initiative forums, consultative platforms, even one treaty that many external actors do have signed, because it's better to sign it than not to sign it. And actually, the ASEAN succeeded in dragging, in attracting external actors, including great powers, within this net, which means in the end that the ASEAN has succeeded in being the one setting the rules, the agenda, and the framework, including for great powers, which is a huge and absolutely concrete gain. If we can make it very short in one sentence, today it is virtually impossible for an external actor, including great powers, at least it's very complicated, to engage with Southeast Asia while at the same time ignoring the ASEAN. Okay, so this is a concrete gain. However, it is a top-down process. So you have the organization which can, under the aegis of which these processes are ongoing. So if we look from an ASEAN point of view, what happens in the C5, we can identify some similar features, I would say. with the huge difference, however, that since there is no supreme organization in Central Asia for the C5, it is rather a bottom-up process than top-down, which explains the critical role of individual states, mainly Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, because to make it short, someone has to start it. In terms of identity, very quickly, because it's at the beginning, the way I understand it, but I attract your attention on the last consultative meeting of the heads of the C5 states in Central Asia. It has already been mentioned by a previous colleague. One of the topics were to develop regional identity. So how it will develop, we cannot know. However, when we have the ASEAN example in mind, I think this should be taken very seriously. The way I understand it is that the C5 leaders do understand what is at stake here. So it's very important. The second similarity that we can see is that an effort of the C5 to create a denser and denser net of intra-regional interactions with the final objective, let's say all the C5 to be on the same page. So I will not list them, all of them, but they are very recent. Just I will keep the attention on the bilateral initiatives because they are extremely important. We have seen a multiplication in the last 2 years of bilateral treaties, especially with Kazakhstan as signatory. And this is important because creating a dense net of normative relations between the C5 helps actually, it's a kind of way to overcome the lack of a supreme piloting organization. This is very important to keep going this trend. And the last point that is, how to say that, is relative also to the ASEAN strategy, is the way the C5 tries to acquire international status and recognizability. I will not go into detail because it has been widely approached in previous presentation, mainly the C5. This is important because it means that also the world is getting used to deal with the C5, even if it's not an institutionalized international organization. It comes as a kind of fait accompli in some way. So I don't know if I have 1 or 2 minutes more.
Actually,
Okay.
the time is up.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's okay.
maybe you
just
your
few
final
objective and recommendation, but it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, then. Thank you very much, Aris. So, Dr. Wang, is it your turn? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic, and Dr. Aris gave us a framework to compare Central Asia and Southeast Asia. I think it's very interesting. As we know, ASEAN is a very important regional organization in the world. According to comparative regionalism, ASEAN different from the European Union. Its success does not depend on regional organization, but rather on regional identity. So at the same time, ASEAN play a crucial role in push East Asian integration, establish ASEAN way to balance the greater powers competition. So I think this is very similar between Central Asia countries and Southeast Asia countries. Central Asian countries are small nations share numerous similarity with Southeast Asia countries. So I think Central Asia can learn from a lot from ASEAN. So, but I'm wondering, this speaker, Dr. Aris, speak about ASEAN as regarded as a bottom-up integration model. I think this is much more. I think it's a very good insight to study ASEAN, but I don't think this is the model of ASEAN. In the contact or regional integration among developing countries, economic factors may not the primary motivation. However, political and security consideration may be more important, as evidenced by the origins of Southeast Asia integration in security issues, not economy. So, Central Asia's integration based on bottom-up model is possible. So this is my question. Or maybe there are another way to learn from ASEAN's models, especially regional identity or regional culture. Yeah, I just give a brief comment on this. Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
So, Dr. Wang, thank you very much. So, yeah, let's take this as a comment, right? Perhaps you might consider this comment while you update your paper. So, thank you very much, the panelists, for
just one quick comment. So I think that for Aris' paper, it's a typical example of a so-called comparative regionalism. So I know Professor Wang is also one of China's top experts on comparative regionalism. And I think that among the submissions, Aris' paper is quite unique because he adopts a comparative approach, comparing ASEAN and Central Asia. So my question for Aris is that how you can create something out of this comparative regionalism by comparing A with B. I mean, it's easy to compare, okay, but do you think that you produce something really insightful? Because by comparing ASEAN with Central Asia, do you mean Central Asia needs to follow the path of ASEAN, or do you mean something else? So what's the point of doing this comparative regional approach? So my quick question for Aris.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is to provide an additional analysis tool of what happens in Central Asia. The second, which is, I would say, the result of this, is also to provide some, for example, guidance. It doesn't mean that you have to duplicate ASEAN for the reasons I explained. It is not possible in its totality. However, on the question of identity, for example, it's a quite good example because the ASEAN countries have many differences among them. Okay, different religions, different histories. There are more differences in ASEAN than in Central Asia. However, they succeeded somehow, although it's a process. I mean, they are still discussing on what will be our identity in the ASEAN. It never ends. The second thing, we have this also in the European Union, okay, in terms of identity. And the second things, okay, I had put this in the objectives and recommendations. There is also the differences. So the comparison with the ASEAN helps showing what are the weaknesses in Central Asia, and the fact that there is a lack of regional organization in Central Asia means that the process is far more vulnerable in Central Asia. I think a previous colleague said step by step. Yes, it should be not too far, not too quickly, because there is danger that everything collapses. So I think the ASEAN, in many things, shows the way as a process, not as an end in itself. I don't know if this is this response to your question.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much, Aris. So with this, I think we have already started our Q&A session. So we can get one more question from the audience. So in case audience has questions, please raise your hand, or perhaps you can type, or even from the panelist members. So I think we can allow one more question, then we will need to resume. So any questions for our panelist members? The audience can also pose questions. Please raise your hand. Okay, seems we don't have any questions with that, so we just on time. So I'd like to thank all the panelist members and the discussants and also audiences and the guests who were with us in the first session. So we are just concluding the first session. Please, we have so we're gonna have brief break, and at 3:30 sharp we will start our second session where we're gonna continue this exactly same topic, regionalism in Central Asia, perhaps the power kind of rule and the play with the big powers, and also the challenges and opportunities posing to this region building process. So please, now we're gonna have a short break, and at 3:30 we're gonna resume. We're gonna be back and start our second session.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.